Serial killers. While beloved members of society, it is often difficult to understand the way they think. Even just looking at them brings up so many questions. Why does he look like that? Why is he doing that? Well, gentlemen, all of these questions and more—
Stop right there, criminal scum!
—will be answered in today's Shadows of Doubt video. In the dystopian world of Shadows of Doubt, you, the player, are all that stands between society and the ever-looming threat of ritualistic sacrifice. However, when faced with an endless tide of psychopathic murderers, I realized the most efficient way to catch them was to learn to think like them. Just as Sun Tzu said in The Art of War, if two men kiss, they're probably gay. While that may not apply directly to this situation, those are definitely words to live by. Today, I will be using my detective's intuition, corporate espionage, and unfathomable riz to identify a serial killer and study their mannerisms. Will I succeed in my endeavor to get inside the mind of a killer and save the city? Or will I enter a drug-induced manic state and become the next thing the city fears? Only one way to know. But first, Apex Gaming PCs. While Apex Gaming has a wide variety of affordable yet reliable PCs available, I'd recommend the Apex Streamer. Coming in several unique designs and sporting an NVIDIA RTX 4060, Ryzen 5700 8-core processor, and 32 gigs of RAM, the Apex Streamer is the perfect mid-level PC for reliable, high-performance gaming or starting your career as a content creator. And don't worry about the price. On top of amazing financing options, if you use my creator code BONGOS at checkout, you can get 10% off your order of any Apex Gaming PC. So what are you waiting for? Throw out that old setup and fix your mental illness once and for all by clicking the link in the pinned comment or video's description. Use code BONGOS at checkout and get yourself an Apex Gaming PC today. If you don't, I'll find you. Before I could study a serial killer, I needed to find one. What better place to look for one than the world's most dangerous city, Springfield, Ohio. Upon arriving in the city, I had two immediate goals. The first, of course, being find a serial killer, and the second being to secure money. Choosing to secure money first, I headed into a nearby diner and made my way to the job listings board. As I sifted through the cum-splattered leaflets, I found a job that caught my eye: a cheating scandal. While I love ruining relationships and seeing women cry, what really attracted me to the case was the $1,000 reward. I picked up the phone and called my client to set the meet.
In Springfield, they're eating the dogs.
He told me to head to Nielsen Boulevard and look for the man sitting down drinking a cola. I headed to the meet spot, and sure enough, there he is. His name is Herkus, and he wants me to investigate his partner Madison for cheating. He told me where he lives and that he'd told his wife I'd be coming over to clean as a cover for investigating the place. Sure, simple enough. Yet this conversation with Herkus brought up some questions that I didn't really consider until writing the script. As far as I can tell, there aren't cell phones in Shadows of Doubt, only landlines, which means when I called Herkus from the diner, he was at home. Herkus' home is on the 6th floor of his building, around the block, and it only took me roughly 30 seconds from the moment I hung up the phone to reach the meeting spot. So did Herkus sprint here? Did he hurriedly grab a cola out of the fridge, sprint down 6 flights of stairs and out to this bench to sit nonchalantly pretending he's been here the whole time? Gentlemen, it is very possible that my client is mentally deficient. I headed to Herkus' home and knocked on the door, pushing past the wife, and walked directly to the medicine cabinet. Unfortunately, I did not find any illegal substances. Damn it. I began my investigation in the bedroom, rifling through drawers, reading personal medical documents, and stealing items from their safe. However, it wasn't until I hacked into Madison's email account that I found a break in the case. From reading the emails, it seems Madison has been sneaking off to a hotel with a woman named Daniela. Fascinating. Not only is Madison cheating on her mentally deficient husband, but she's also gay. Deciding to investigate this Daniela and see if I can find any concrete proof of their gay relationship, I looked up Daniela in the phone book and found out she lives right next door. Using the ventilation system, I was able to gain access to Daniela's apartment, dropping down in her bathroom and creeping over to the medicine cabinet. There it was, the one thing I needed above all else, a bottle of Perk 30. Not long after dropping into the bathroom, a woman who I assumed to be Daniela entered the bathroom, spotted me, and immediately got hysterical. Luckily, I'm very good at negotiating with women. With Daniela no longer suspicious, I began checking around her apartment for more evidence of the affair, and unfortunately, I didn't find anything. However, I really feel like this is the girl. And I'm sure the email will be more than enough evidence for my mentally deficient client. I compiled all the information together, turned in the case, and got paid. Now I was ready to tackle my real goal, studying a serial killer, which, as luck would have it, there's already one at large, having killed 2 people since I arrived in the city. I made my way to the first murder scene, an apartment in the basement of Shoemaker Grange. The victim was lying dead in the center of the room, surrounded by what appears to be a ritual circle made of the victim's own blood. The murder weapon was a straight razor, and it currently lied discarded on the floor next to the victim. Worst of all, this man appears to be poor. Ugh. I took some photographs to document the scene, then began inspecting the body and murder weapon, collecting fingerprints, and learning what I could about the victim. On the floor, I found a note that read, "You're not being followed, it's just your mind. Take the pills." Curious. My doctor regularly says the same thing to me. Is the killer targeting fellow free thinkers? Obviously, I need more data. So after gathering what information I could from the first victim, I headed upstairs to 302 Shoemaker Grange to begin investigating the second victim. Arriving in the apartment, I was faced with a very similar scene as before. Body on the floor, ritual circle of victim's blood, razor blade cast aside. And look, another note. The connection is obvious, isn't it? Both of these men were being coerced by their doctor into taking their normal pills. But who is the doctor? Well, after committing a few minor HIPAA violations, I learned the doctor of victim number 2 is named Kalisha Kent. Do I think this doctor is the killer? Not necessarily, but it's still a potential connection worth looking into. I made my way to the Daffodil ward of the hospital and snuck into the back offices, finding Dr. Kent's computer and hacking into her email account. Apparently, victim number 2 sent a number of emails to the doctor claiming someone with red hair was stalking them. However, Dr. Kent just told them it's the meds. Remember, gentlemen, if a medical professional tells you to take your pills and that you're a danger to others, hit them as hard as you can with a metal pipe. So from what I could tell, only victim number 2 was a patient of Dr. Kent, so that connection is dead in the water. However, we did learn that the killer probably has red hair, and as I was leaving the hospital, I received a report that a third person had been murdered. The third victim was killed outdoors in the middle of the street, which to me seems extremely reckless, but maybe our killer isn't too worried about getting caught. This suspicion was quickly confirmed when I found a piece of paper next to the victim, seemingly left by the killer with a clue to their real name. Do they want to be caught? Or maybe they want the world to know who's really behind all this. I inspected the body, and after checking her ID, I learned that she was in fact victim number 2's wife. I gathered what little info I could from the crime scene, and then began to ponder. While society saw the first 2 victims as dangerous schizophrenics, they were likely just being followed by our red-haired killer. And with victim number 3's death, the only connection I could come up with was that they all lived in the same building. Deciding that was as good a lead as any, I made my way to the security office of Shoemaker Grange, knocked on the door, and calmly convinced the guard, and 2 other curious bystanders, to let me go through the building's residency files. I started rifling through the files, and sure enough, found an individual with bright red hair named Dante Watkins, a name that curiously matches up exactly with the clue the killer left behind. Okay, so this is definitely the guy, and now that I've found him, I can begin to study him. My first stop in learning about this killer was his apartment. Using the ventilation system, I dropped down into his bedroom, and let me just say, this guy is definitely killing people. His home was incredibly clean. His safe contained nothing but a comb, and after rifling through his drawers, I found a journal that seemingly laid out his motives. Apparently, he had a vision of Chinese Supreme Leader John Cena, who told him to purge those who don't like ice cream. I guess that's as good a reason as any to start killing people. Now, we may know the motive, but the question still remains. How does the killer know who doesn't like ice cream? Well, there's only one way to answer that. That's right, gentlemen. It's time for an experiment. Imagine for a moment, you're walking home to your apartment, when suddenly you feel a sharp pain to the back of your head, and everything goes black. When you come to, you find yourself in a strange apartment. A cacophony of screaming and bones crunching echoes from the halls just beyond the door, and then suddenly, silence. The door to the room swings open, revealing a well-dressed man with an oven on his head, leering in the doorway, who then proceeds to fill the room with the unconscious bodies of all your neighbors. That'd be pretty traumatic, right? Well, that was the experience the residents of Shoemaker Grange endured, as one by one I incapacitated them and dragged them into this apartment. My goal? To see firsthand how Dante chooses a victim. Once the room was good and filled, I got the drop on Dante and incapacitated him, dragging him to the room and dropping a razor blade on the ground. I barred the door, and when Dante came to consciousness, I uncuffed him and climbed into a vent in the ceiling, eager to see who he would choose. Yet he didn't bite, instead opting to break out of the room and head out into the hallway to stand idly by the security door. Interesting. Maybe the thrill of the hunt is a big part of why he kills? To test this theory, I decided to wait him out for 2 real-life hours. I continued to keep the security door closed, yet he never budged. Eventually, I relented. It was clear Dante was unwilling to kill captive prey. While that is useful for understanding his thought process, I still had no idea how he identified his victims. I set up a surveillance operation in the apartment across the hall from Dante to monitor his movements and wait for him to strike again. But to my surprise, he never did. Over the course of 2 in-game days, he never made a single move to kill a person. Was captivity the cure for all serial killers? I'm not so sure. There's no way you kill in the name of the glorious leader and then suddenly refuse the call. The killer was still in there, and there was just one way to get him out. Now, gentlemen, as you know, one of life's greatest pleasures is following women home late at night. But, as it turns out, this hobby can be incredibly useful when attempting to commit a murder. That's right. In order to reawaken Dante's killer instincts, I was going to become a copycat. This person looked as good as any, and I followed her home, watching from afar and taking photographs. When she entered her apartment, I waited a few minutes, then used the vents to drop into her home, finding her in bed. I flipped on the lights, then cut her down without warning, fully immersing myself in the mind of a psychopath. Then, to make this murder as public as possible, I dragged her corpse across the room and threw it out a window into the homeless camp that lie below. Well, I'd succeeded in committing a copycat murder. All I had to do now was wait for the news to reach Dante, which didn't take very long. I'd barely made it back to my observation center when Dante was on the move, hurriedly making his way from his apartment and up the stairs. I knew it. I knew his ego couldn't handle another killer being around. He ran up the stairs to his neighbor's apartment and broke down the door. I quickly dropped the security gate and entered the apartment just in time to see Dante carving up his upstairs neighbor before hurriedly fleeing the scene. Excitedly, I dragged the cadaver out into the hall and asked Dante why he killed this man. I just had to know. But Dante just pulled out a hammer, approached me, and began wailing on me with it. I tried to defend myself, but he just wouldn't go down, and with each blow I took, my vision began to fade.
冰淇淋，我很喜欢冰淇淋。
Huh? Communist leader John Cena? Yeah, man, it's me. You're taking a beating out there. Well, he's your acolyte. Nah, he isn't right for the CCP. It's you, man. This whole thing's been about you, teaching you the skills you need to serve the glorious nation. I'm not strong enough. Dude, you filled a room with like 30 people and tried to feed them to a serial killer, then murdered a woman and threw her out a window into a homeless camp. Fair point. Look, man, I gotta go. Just remember your training and you'll beat this bozo. Wait, John, if I never see you again, take care, Space Cowboy. You'll see me again. Anytime you push an old lady off a bridge, I'll be there. When you're drowning a homeless man in a park fountain, I'll be there. See, because I'm always with you, man. And also the CCP is always watching. And one more thing. When you're taking a guy like this down, shout this in your heart. Zhangwo, Shenzai, wow, Bing Chilling! With that final strike, Dante crumpled to the floor. I tossed him out a window in the top floor of the building, and that was the end of it. I get it now. I came here to learn how to think like a killer in order to catch them. And while I succeeded in that goal, I see now I can use those skills to be so much more. The glorious leader needs me. But before I become the ultimate sleeper agent, there's one last thing I have to do. Alright, pal. I'm getting you out of here. But first, I'd like to give a huge shout out and thank you to all my patrons. Seriously, as always, you guys are amazing, and I'll see you all in the next video.